What is the state of race relations in South Africa 23 years into democracy? And did the ideal of a rainbow nation die with former President Nelson Mandela? What triggered last week's attack of a black couple by a group of white men at a chicken outlet in Pretoria? And can EFF leader Julius Malema's recent comments about the Indian community in Durban ill-treating black workers fuel racial tensions? What time is it? It's question time. Khotsong, and welcome to the show. My name is Mpho. The negotiated settlement that gave birth to a democratic dispensation in South Africa was hailed as a miracle across the world. The country had been divided along racial lines during the apartheid rule. The late former President Nelson Mandela and the erstwhile National Party leader F.W. de Klerk received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 for their unwavering commitment to national reconciliation. 23 years on, these efforts are under threat, with racial animosity rearing its ugly head again. Those living in farm areas seem to be at the receiving end of these attitudes. The matter being heard in the High Court in Middelburg involving Theo Jackson and Willem Oosthuizen is a case in point. The two are facing charges of kidnapping and assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm, amongst others. They are accused of forcing victim Lotshwa into a coffin a few months ago. Meanwhile, a few videos of racial violence have surfaced on social media recently. One of them shows a group of white men attacking a black couple at a drive-thru of a popular chicken outlet in Pretoria. But is it not about time to hold a national indaba, maybe on racial tolerance? We don't know. We are live. And if you can call us and lay your views, the numbers to dial 089-110-4210. Tweet us at QuestionTime24. My guest today, Advocate Mohamed Ameermia. He's the Commissioner at the South African Human Rights Commission, and Karen Libone is Head of Center for Risk Analysis at the South African Institute of Race Relations. Gentlemen, let me welcome you to the show. When I was discussing this with a few friends, when they were asking, what are you talking about today? And I said, race relations. And they say, who are you having? And I mentioned you too. He says, but you don't have people who are troubling us there. So were we supposed to bring in a few Afrikaners who have been accused of fueling racial tensions out there? I don't know. But is the problem of race in South Africa between blacks and whites only?
Well, good evening and thank you very much for the show. You don't need to be troublemakers to be here. You just need to have a fair mind with fairness and justice to answer these kind of challenges that are confronting our society 23 years down the line. We have a laudable constitution, as everybody says, a remarkable constitution, but there are still underlying tensions that are prevailing in society and which we have to work through. So that's the reality. I mean, just the ushering of democracy didn't wipe out racial tensions in this country anyway. And it's something that we have to work towards to make it happen. Mm-hmm. I think we lost two opportunities. The one opportunity was when we had the anti-racism conference in Durban in 2001. There were clear resolutions to work towards the eradication of racism in this country. And government had a kind of a commitment to that, but the work to make it happen somewhere along the line fell off.
What were the suggestions there, or recommendations?
Well, the thing is, racism was there. It's always been here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we had to do via legislation through the promotion of equality and the prevention of unfair discrimination, read together with Section 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights, we had to look into the issues to address the challenges of the day. We had the legislation passed, but unfortunately we didn't go any further. So what has happened is it has put the government on the back foot and all of us on the back foot, and therefore the Department of Justice had to now recently in 2015 start off on a roadshow around the National Action Campaign, right? Trying to work through these challenges. I think we missed the boat in 2001. It's not too late. And I think it's an attitudinal problem. Okay. The question is whether you can legislate around attitudes is a question that we perhaps need to deliberate more upon now.
And I think indeed that's a very key question here. Really, do you have to legislate? How people relate with each other. I mean, racism. It's not, and this is my view. It's not something really that needs to be legislated. That hey, relate. It's something that's supposed to come naturally.
You're absolutely right, Mpo. And the thing about racism as well is that you cannot identify it unless it manifests itself into visible action. So yes, we need to sit down as South Africans and really think seriously about these things. You cannot really legislate for people to like each other. And also coming to, I don't know if I can go further, there's a context to this, Mpo, about particularly the cases that you were mentioning at the beginning in terms of farm areas, rural areas. If you give a brief historical context to this, you'll see that in 2003, the former Mbeki administration removed the commando system in rural areas without putting in place an alternative, yes. And what you have now is a community that feels that they are being neglected by government to such an extent that in 2012, December, they went to the Minister of Police to march against, to ask the minister to make farmer tax and made as a priority. And the minister declared that illegal. But on 2 occasions, AfriForum went to the United Nations Forum on Minority Affairs to make their case heard, to say that the South African government is not really taking us serious in terms of policing. What I want to illustrate here, Mpo, is to say that you have a community that feels, rightly or wrongly, that they are under siege and that their concerns and grievances are not being taken seriously by government. Similarly, as you have in cases of Deep Slot and Khayelitsha, where across the board, there's a feeling that the South African police are not really delivering in terms of protecting citizens. And you have cases of vigilantism, which is how you can view these issues as well in rural areas, except that some of them have got racial undertones, which brings us here today.
Anne, you're in Durban. Welcome. Anne? Oh, Anne is gone. Okay, we've lost Anne there, but please do give us a call. We want to hear from you. What do you think of the state of race relations here in South Africa? 089-1104-210. But let me tell you something. South Africans are very pretentious. I'm generalizing here. We pretend we love each other. All is well. If you are a black person, I greet my Afrikaner colleagues every morning. Afrikaners can even go to an extent. I've got five black friends who visit me and all that. But in actual fact, we don't love each other, and I think this is what happens whenever there are, like you're saying, undertones, of notions that we are keeping. And I just don't know how are we going to deal with this, because black people and white people in South Africa don't love each other.
Well, not according to a study we did that we released in March 2016. Depending on how you look at it, it showed that 54% of South African residents felt that race relations have improved since 1994. But there is another 20% that feels that race relations have worsened, and we shouldn't discount them as a minority. We should take it to, it's a very huge percentage. It's a very
just hold it there. I want us to take Victor. Victor is in Cape Town, and then we'll talk about those statistics. Victor, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, welcome.
Hello to you.
Yes, welcome. Go ahead, Victor.
Okay, listen, first of all, I would like to say to all the leaders in this country that they have two marvelous opportunities with regards to how resolve, like about everything in South Africa with regards to racism, you call it, you name it, state.
Okay, Victor is gone there. Now, what is this thing called minority rights? Why should South Africa, 23 years into democracy, be bothering about this so-called minority rights which only affect a particular race?
You know, if you look at racism, it's not a question of minority or majority. It's a question of fundamental freedoms that cuts across the board, affecting every citizen and every national living in this country. So you don't have to be in a minority or majority to enjoy the rights and the privileges that the Constitution gives you. That is the first thing. I think this thing about minority and majority rights were threshed out during the interim Constitution and the final Constitution. So I think every person has the equal protection of the law. They must engage the law through the Constitution to effect their rights. Now, whether you do it individually or collectively, is neither here nor there, because you are making a point by exercising your rights. We have the equality courts. It doesn't say that only minority communities can access justice. It says anybody can access justice. So it's much more broader and it's much more protective.
Then what happens when this guy gets moved in Pretoria just for asking people to move, you know? And you take them to court, and what should happen?
I think fundamental to the Constitution itself is the principle of respecting people, because every human being has a right to dignity. We live in a free country, and there should be the principles of equality that must come across very strongly. I think we need to start off very deeply, and we need to start off with the education system. The question is, are the teachers teaching those rights and those values at a very formal years of a child's life? Because if those generation can go through this process, had we done that in 2000, imagine a whole society of the born-frees would have been educated within the framework of the Bill of Rights.
You have a scenario where colored parents at a primary school say, we do not want a black principal or a black teacher. This is happening at primary school, but anyway, just hold it. Let's go to, is it Durban?
Yes, please. Hello,
Paul?
good evening.
Yes, welcome, Paul.
Yes, I'm calling you from Durban.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to, when you started talking, you mentioned the comments that Malema spoke in Durban.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say from my own observation, Malema specifically spoke about the Indians.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that what Malema said was very, very true. There's nothing wrong. I think Malema just spoke the words of the people. I think for me, Indians are worse than the white people. And the problem that we have in South Africa is the problem that people, they don't want to confront the issues. They don't want people to speak about the problems.
Okay.
And when you do that, obviously at some point it comes out in a form of violence.
Okay, so Paul, when you say, in your view, Indians are worse than white people, where do you stand? You are obviously not Indian.
Yeah, Paul, I've experienced it first. And first of all, I'm a foreigner. And I've worked in restaurants, I've worked with Indians and South African black people. So if you look at the way the Indians treat South African black people, they don't treat them well. There's no respect. When it comes to pay, they don't want to pay. And you look at the way they promote one another. So it doesn't matter whether a black person knows the job, they are skilled, they will still promote one another. But again, the problem with us black people is that if you look at all these businesses, the white businesses, the Indian businesses, most of the money, the patronage comes from black people. So you see black people, they don't want to support one another. And I think that's a problem. So we have to stop complaining and begin to empower ourselves, begin to learn to circulate the money amongst ourselves and promote ourselves.
Paul, thank you very much. Well, as we're speaking, there's a video of some guys who were also mooring each other at the golf course, and I was asking myself, is this what happens when you hit white balls? But yeah, it's a funny one, but you know, and all of them, usually they take off their hats whenever they want to throw punches. I don't know what is it with men and hats and punches, but this is just a typical example of how racially divided, you know, South Africa is, even at the games.
Yes, as I said, things were improving. This was the second study we did. The first one showed even more good news than the second one. But what has really happened in the past few months and 2 years since 2015 is that the environment has been, you know, has been poisoned by a lot of the social media posts and so on. And with government coming in and also trying to, we've seen a lot of cases where they've tried to clamp down on racists with heavy punishments. But really what has happened is that each and every incident of racism really sets us back a long time in terms of improving racial relations in the country.
And you're back. We're sorry about the call that got cut.
Hello, no, I dropped it.
Oh, sorry
about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Drunk and disorderly again. By the way, you always look very smart. Can I say that to you?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no. I know, look, at Durban, we have got lots of Indians. But I say, thank God we have them. We got some of the best surgeons and doctors in this country. I'm not saying all Indians are good or all of them are bad. It's like whites, we get good. Blacks, we get good. But we're going to get bad in doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't you agree that, you know, we're all just people.
Yeah.
My mother or my parents didn't give me a choice of what colour skin I had.
Correct.
I had no choice. I'm born the colour I am, and I've got no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, thanks for talking to me.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thanks for the compliments. And they're calling from Durban. But see, there's one thing Steve Biko says, in South Africa, white people must be reminded that they are only human. And similarly, black people must also be reminded that there's nothing wrong with them. They are also human. And I think this is one thing that we seem not to grasp, either at an early age or something of the sort. When I posted a tweet of a young white boy singing Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika, the national anthem. Well, he butchered it here and there, but you know, there was some sympathy, as though he is not supposed to know it. Whereas my daughter is expected to sing Nkosi Sikelel' Morena Buluka and this stem perfectly. I think that's not fair.
It may not be fair, but it means there is some underlying systemic problems that needs to be addressed. Okay, it's supposed to be addressed at an educational level. Mm-hmm. It needs to be addressed at an interfaith community level. The problem is we are focusing so much on our differences as opposed to our commonalities. I mean, when we won the 1996 soccer Africa's Cup of Nations,
yeah,
the country was like in euphoria.
Yeah.
Everybody, you know, was in the jubilant mood. The 1995 World Rugby,
yeah,
right? Everybody was in the element. And then immediately these things go by, even the 2010 World Cup, then we go back into our little racial divides and we kind of focus on the differences.
Because Pirates and Chiefs are losing, I guess. But Tammy, you are in Polokwane. Welcome.
Thank you, Mpo. It's Butani,
Oh! Bad. Okay, Bhutan, welcome. I'm sorry they said Tammy, eh?
No, it's fine. I can see the producer that's setting you for failure.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Okay.
I want to pose a comment.
Yeah.
I want to find out from the Human Rights Commission, as far as the Marikana issue is concerned, were they involved? To what extent were they involved? Why were they not involved if the answer is in the negative? Number two, the coffin assault issue. What is the Human Rights Commission doing despite if they have already issued a statement condemning it? What in practical terms have they done? Did they lay a criminal charge? And if they did not, why? What is the role? Should they wait for us citizens to lay a complaint, or can they themselves automatically lay a complaint on behalf of an individual? Thank you very much.
Bhutan and Pulukwan.
Thank you, Bhutani. And I think on the Marikana issue, yes, we were involved in that. We made submissions before the Marikana Commission of Inquiry. Excuse me. And then thereafter, we had hearings in the Human Rights Commission around the issue of, the whole issue of micro-lending vis-a-vis the rights of the workers to a living wage and so forth. And so it was a bigger issue than the Marikana issue. So yes, on that score, we were involved in making those submissions, and then we took from those findings, and we are now doing research around that. And one of the things that we have done through the Marikana experience is we did the case of the Stellenbosch matter in favor of the farm workers right up to the Constitutional Court, and we won that case. It was one of the biggest landmark victories in the country. In relation to the coffin case itself, when the Commission got wind of it, the matter was already at an advanced stage in terms of the criminal justice system. So we have got a watching brief on that. Okay. We're waiting for the outcome of that. But yet, I think what the point Bhutan is making is very important, because we need to then look at ways of trying to, proactively intervene so that, we can address these societal imbalances. As my colleague was saying here, the more remote you are from the urban areas, the less the chances of you getting, access to justice. And this is where organizations like the Chapter 9, the Human Rights Commission, with its presence in all 9 provinces through the NGOs and the paralegal movement, need to get involved to protect the rights of those people who are marginalized by the very system that needs to protect them.
Okay, let's go to the Free State. Is it Patrick? Patrick, welcome. Oh, Patrick is gone. Patrick is gone. Okay, sorry about that. Now, how do we improve race relations in South Africa when a Pitandoro calls looking for accommodation or an apartment in Kilani, he is told it's full. Then he asks Francis Hurd, his colleague, who is white, and she gets it.
I think broadly, what needs to be what needs to be gotten into the heads of South Africans, from whichever quarter they emanate, is that each comment that degrades people on the basis of race, each comment, each action, each violent action is really going to undo the little glue that is making South Africans stick together. The social cohesion programs will amount to nothing if South Africans are not made aware of how vulnerable we are as a society because of our past, and that whatever action we do that goes out into public is only going to undo all of the good that has come out from Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk.
Should we be optimistic? I mean, this question of racism has been going on. Even mature democracies are still battling with race. The U.S., it's worse.
No, absolutely, you are correct, because I think it's a fight for human rights, and it's a question of balancing the might versus the right, and this is where the dignity of human beings must factor in, and everybody has a sense of must have a sense of worth, an intrinsic sense of worth with dignity.
Okay.
Now, if we do not protect those rights and we cannot advance those rights, then we are leading towards unimaginable, chaotic and situations which then have unintended consequences.
Gentlemen, we have run out of time, but good luck with your future endeavors and projects to try and heal this nation of our very nasty racial past. We really wish you the best. But that was question time for today. A big thank you to my guests and to you for watching the show. From me and the entire crew. Hi, Behold.